Hey, what's up? Rick D's in the morning. Right now, Vendog.
3, 2, 1.
Access granted.
Vendog Radio Live starts right now.
Well, welcome to Thursday, and people are like, "What? You're on YouTube?" Yeah, we're just trying it out today, but don't worry, we're gonna do a YouTube at least once every 3 weeks on Thursday. But it's going to be interesting. If you are on YouTube, please do like, share, subscribe. If you are on the infamous Rumble, yes, please put it up on Rumble at Vendog Radio USA. Repost, share, put it in the troposphere. If you are on X, formerly known as Twitterverse, please do us a favor and share, because on X, it's very difficult to get it out there. If you are on Getter, Gettr, thank you so much to Jason Miller and the entire front office staff over at Getter, because it really does get better with Getter. Thank you so much. And immediately following the broadcast, we will be relayed to iHeartRadio, Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcast, and wherever you shall download broadcast and podcast. And thank you to TuneIn Radio for adding us as well. We appreciate that very much. And we are going out for the radio-friendly way this week, I tell you. It's pretty awesome. And thank you to my wonderful moderators who are taking care of business, who always are ready to neutralize whenever we are on call. So don't forget, coming up March 20th, through the 22nd, it is the Living in the Last Days Prophecy Conference at Kurt Reed's Church with Pastor Tom Hughes, Pete Garcia, John Haller, and Billy Crone. And tickets are on sale, I heard, for in-person and for online. So hopefully you guys are there in person, because I will be doing live broadcasts, pre- and post shows before and after the conference each day. So that will be a great time. Hopefully you guys get to be there for that. It's going to be fun. And let me tell you, these tickets are at a reasonable price. That is what is so cool. They're reasonably priced. All right. Coming back on the other side, we have a guest with us today, but we also have Gail Seiler from BetrayalProjectUSA.org, the norm on Thursday, and Marsha Joyner, Betrayed by Hospice. It's a great book. You guys need to pick that up, because it's got a lot of information on there for you, and we'll talk more about that. And also, we have a very special guest from Texas, Right to Life. Yes, Dr. John Seago will be joining us today, and it's going to be a wonderful show, because we're going pro-life all the way from the womb to the tomb. That's right. And we're not doing it the woke way. We're doing it the Jesus way. We're coming right back on the other side right after this. And thank you for listening and watching Vendog Radio Live.
Follow us on all of the socials at Vendog Radio. We'll be right back with more Vendog Radio Live after this.
Sir, yes, sir!
Hello, my friends. Vendog here. Thank you for your support of the broadcast. I just want to tell you that in advance. And as you're watching, if you feel it led on your heart by the Lord to support the broadcast, yes, I am hitting the QR codes for you right there just to click on them. You can support us by hitting the Cash App, Venmo, or PayPal. That's right, Cash App, Venmo, or PayPal. And thank you so much for your prayers, because that's the number one thing we need. Thank you so much for supporting Vendog Radio Live. Vendog Radio popping off. God bless. Hey, what's happening, everybody? Vendog here. Now go to my website right now and order some merch for yourself. Hundreds of items to choose from. Men, women, children, pets, you name it, we got it for everybody. Yes, indeed. That is vendogradio.myspreadshop.com. VINNDOGG radio.myspreadshop.com. Log on today and grab your gear. We have the latest. Yes, if you love Jesus, get your gear. vendogradio.myspreadshop.com. That's vendogradio.myspreadshop.com. Don't delay. Get shopping today.
Now, back to the man on a mission for the King of Glory, Jesus Christ. Vendog Radio.
Welcome back, everybody. And I am so glad that you guys are here. And first of all, we're going to bring in my good friend, Ms. Marsha Joyner. And then we're going to pop in Gail Seiler in just a second here. Hi, Marsha.
Hi, how are you doing?
Excellent. And I want everybody to know about your book. The reason why I am pushing the show to YouTube today, too, because I want more people to know about your book that has 5 stars. And I was probably one of those people that gave you 5 stars. Betrayed
you.
by Hospice. Yes.
So the book was written a year ago, and it is just to warn people about what's going on in hospice and healthcare. And I think we say multiple times, knowledge is power, and you don't know what you don't know. So this book puts it all in one book for you, and it has links in there as well as the verbiage. So you don't have to be familiar with an internet to get the information from the book. There are 34 stories in there from real people that lost their loved ones under so-called hospice comfort care. So you don't want to know about it before you need it and
Yes.
you're in a bad situation.
Absolutely, and this book is available on Amazon, folks. And I think it would be a great buy for anybody who has anybody who's elderly in their families that they're taking care of, because this stuff is vital, and we need to keep our heads on a swivel as far as all of this is concerned. All right, now we're bringing in Mrs. Betrayal Project herself, Gail Sala.
Hello.
Good afternoon. Good evening.
Yeah, I'm excited about today's show.
Me too. Me
It's
too.
going to be great.
Yes, I'm excited about bringing Dr. John Seago in. Let's bring him in right now. Hi, John. How are you, sir?
Hey, I'm good.
Welcome.
Couldn't be better. It couldn't be better timing with the March for Life just happening and all that stuff.
Yep. Yeah, we were in D.C. with 9 of our college students, and thankfully nobody got snowed in. So everybody got home back to Texas safely.
That's good. That's good. That's
So
good.
can you start by telling us, I was looking at your bio. I know you're a devoted Christian and a father and a husband and a bioethicist. So can you tell us about how you got started into Texas Right for Life?
Yeah, my parents were pro-life activists in downtown Houston growing up. 2 of my siblings are part of our family because of that ministry, ministering to women there downtown Houston. And sibling to our family were children that are more of a burden, that are more of a problem than a blessing. And so, kind of growing up, we were pro-life. We were engaged in kind of that frontline ministry. And whenever I got into high school, I met folks in government and politics. And as a high schooler, I wanted to know, really, how does a Christian get involved in that? How do Christians make a difference there? Started volunteering for Texas Right to Life. That turned into a job, and started just abortion and pregnant women, but we were applying these same principles, the dignity of every human being, no matter their size, no matter their circumstance, no matter what they can contribute to society, that they had value, and we were applying that debates about medicine and what doctors should and should not be able to do. And several years into that, we had a lot of big political fights over that, and that kind of convinced me to go back to school and end up getting my master's in bioethics and my doctorate in bioethics. I saw a pro-life voice, of a strong Christian voice, and that's why I went back. And so I still publish in bioethics. I teach in that space as well, but my primary job is president of Texas Right to Life, leading the state's largest and oldest pro-life organization, and from protecting babies in the womb all the way to valuing Texans who are getting towards the end of their life.
Right. And I think that's wonderful that you don't stop with just talking about the baby in the womb. And because we're looking at the end of life and people that are elderly that are considered, they're not earning a salary perhaps, and they're considered useless feeders. So I think that's wonderful. I like the fact too that you're actually going into the colleges, right?
Yeah.
A
Yeah, we're
scholarship
having
program that trains students, and we help them get to be pro-life ambassadors at their school and start having these conversations with other college students. And a lot of our universities, if they're not hearing the pro-life message from a group like their administrators, and so we really have a unique kind of ministry on college campuses, bringing the pro-life truth and really dealing with some of the most pressing threats on human life, which happens in the hospital, not just from the abortion industry.
So, John, there's a little bit of audio glitching going on with your audio, but I kind of got the gist of what you were saying. What kind of, when you're going into the colleges, what kind of trend are you seeing? Are you seeing young people being more pro-life than they ever were, or is it a struggle to get them engaged in that fight?
Yeah, it's a struggle. I mean, we, the reasons people are pro-abortion, the reasons that people are pro-euthanasia are deep, right? It's really kind of missed the boat on basic principles that every human being has dignity from who they are, not what they can do, not by what they can contribute, and that's a basic Christian principle. It's a great, basic principle of the tree. And so it's a very important principle, and that's missing. And so we have to back up. But we are extremely encouraged that college students today are more engaged. They're more passionate, especially in the last year. Everything with the assassin revival on college campuses of strong conservative Christian students who want to go engage, have respectful but bold conversations on college campuses.
So we might have to fix your audio, John. I don't know, Vindog, would it be helpful if John logged out and in, or you might want to log out and log back in and have Vindog bring you back in, because it's really buffering. It's buffering really, really bad.
Okay, we'll wait for you.
All right. We're gonna wait for John to come back in, and so this is going to be an interesting conversation, because this is not just touching on abortion. This is touching on everything, like
right.
What Gail went through when they tried to knock her off the face of the earth, and and what they did to people's mothers and fathers in hospice. It's absolutely incriminating. But this is important. This is an important issue to talk
about. And they've been involved. Texas Right to Life, they've been involved in many big fights in Texas. So while we wait for John, I don't remember when we had Diane Nugent on.
Mm-hmm.
She was fighting for. She was fighting so that they didn't take her husband off of life support, because she didn't believe him to be brain dead, which is a fallacy. Texas Right to Life was the organization that she went to that got the temporary restraining order. Of course, they killed him as soon as they had him alone, but they were involved in that. I remember a big fight they were in was with the baby Tinsley thing with the 10 days, but so they've been involved in a lot of stuff. But going back to the kids, so being in Texas, I've seen the fruits of what your organization has done. And I've spent a lot of time down at praying outside of abortion clinics, right? And, trying to talk mothers into going going to get that ultrasound, right? Because that changes everything, right? Once they do.
Yeah.
And the one thing I saw a lot of that is a problem in Texas, and I don't know how your organization, it's a blessing where we are now, to be quite honest, with the abortion fight in Texas, but we saw a lot of what you could tell was human trafficking victims going into these clinics, and it really put a damper on abortion when they went to that rule where you had to wait 48 hours. The first appointment couldn't be the abortion because you had one more shot when you saw that license plate come back, right? Like, but what do you see as some of the biggest wins just in like the last 5 years of some legislation that you guys have really spearheaded?
Yeah. Gail, I just noticed. Let me plug something in real quick.
Sure.
And then I'll answer that question.
Yeah, John's going to plug something in, but ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for bearing with us. But this is going to be a very informative broadcast today. So thank you all for your patience. Thank you to my moderators for taking care of business on the live chat side. Thank you for putting it on subscribers mode only on YouTube because we don't want any trollers coming in and visiting. This is not the time for any type of boogery that we're trying to avoid because people are going to come against the stuff that we're talking about right now. So the enemy is at large. So that's all I'm going to say. So let's get back to John with the kids.
Yeah. And
there we go.
And John, where I was going.
Thanks, Gail. Yes, so we've had some huge victories, obviously, whenever it comes to protecting, whenever it comes to protecting babies and their mothers from elective abortion. That's been huge. But on the medical ethics side, we've also made huge progress. 2023 was a great year for restoring some of those patients' rights, putting power back in the hands of families that are trying to protect their loved ones in the hospital. And the same that this life is not worthy, unfortunately, that has permeated our medical society, that's permeated our medical institutions. And so we actually, in Texas, had a very bad law called the 10 days, and we were able to pass a great bill in 2023 to restore some of those patients' rights and make sure that we have more tools to ensure our family.
Yeah, John, you're still rubber banding. I don't know if there seems to be a bandwidth. It looks like bandwidth. But I think you were talking about the 10-day bill or the 10-day law. Were you?
Yeah, some people may not understand what that is.
Yeah, where 10, if you're like in a coma for 10 days, they can just end your life. Or they can deem you to be unsalvageable or whatever they call it. I remember the baby Tinsley case you guys were really heavily involved in, and the parents were fighting to keep their baby alive, and there was a hospital willing to take the baby, but for whatever reason, the hospital that had the baby didn't want to. Like it was very messy because of the 10-day rule. That was a very dangerous law. I mean, I think now it's like the 20-day rule or something, but just as dangerous. I mean, I don't.
Any better?
I think his internet is freezing.
Yeah, it is. It is freezing. Pedal faster, Vindog. Pedal faster.
Yeah. We can't
Well,
hear you.
can you hear me now?
We can hear you.
Off and on.
Okay.
Let's see how we do.
Well, yes. So the 10-day rule says a hospital just has to give you 10 days notice before they take treatment away, and the ethics committee sits down and decide.
They decide
really whether you are part of the problem. So is how's the audio doing, Gail?
It's still a little choppy, but it's a little bit better.
Okay. Well, hopefully we'll get through here. But we were able to amend that. But now what we're seeing is brain death patients. A lot of families are, when their loved one has a brain injury, that hospitals are now coming and saying we should just go ahead and take treatment away from the patient. And so that's really where we're seeing the shift now. Mm-hmm. And again, this is Texas. This is a pro-life state. So we're not talking about assisted suicide. We're talking about other ways that hospitals can take treatment away. And one of the shortcuts that I've been talking to Marsha about is brain injured patients, just declaring or forcing the family to give up on their loved one because there's some kind of brain injury. And so, Marsha, maybe if you want to talk a little bit about that.
Well, we've had Dr. Heidi Klessig on, and when they do tell the patient and the family that the person is brain dead, there's nothing we can do for them, then the reason for that is because they want to harvest their organs. And they tell there only certain people are allowed that are trained to go in and talk to the family because they know how to get the cell. And I hate to say it that way, but they know how to convince the family that their loved one is going to die. There's nothing we can do for them. And they want to do an apnea test, which is not sleep apnea, but it's cutting off the oxygen to the brain. And when they do that, the brain will swell more so that they can convince the family, see, there are no brain waves. And the family is in a situation where, they don't know what to do. And so they wind up following what they're being told, and they allow their loved one to become a donor so that their life would mean something. Well, the problem is the person is not dead when they take their organs. And as we heard from Dr. Heidi Klessig, there are so many people that wind up living after that if they give them time for the brain to heal, and they have been wheeling them down to the operating room, and the person wakes up or they struggle and they are not dying, they are not dead, and they have been able to save people's life. We just saw a situation that someone was involved in an accident with snow. They were two young ladies, and they said that they died, and one of them's family wanted her to give their organs so that her life would mean something because she had said she wanted to do that. 16 years old. They didn't give her time for her brain to heal, and they took this young girl's organs. And to me, this is barbaric. They're still alive, and you need to give their brain time to heal before you start cutting organs out of them.
They're very much rushing. Yeah, they very much rush it. And in that case, one of the parents had said, and she was very excited about signing that organ donation card.
Right.
She got her license just a few weeks or whatever before, and not the medical decision you should be making at 16 at the DMV. Like, there's no informed consent. Nobody told her she was going to be alive when they took her organs. But you're seeing, they're redefining death. They're doctors are taking a lot of liberties with people's DNR. I mean, case in point, I was a full code. They made me a DNR. They forced me to be a DNR. They told my family that I was unsalvageable. I wouldn't live a normal life. I would need a double lung transplant, all that jazz. but here I am with the same set of pipes I went in with, right? Like, I mean,
Right.
guys, like I was
And fighting. And
right,
fighting, right? Yeah.
right. Like, you know, thankfully my family was like, hell no, we're gonna storm the ICU and take her out. But it's yeah, they're not making the decisions in the best interests of the patient. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
And that, John, y'all don't just do Texas. And that's what I think our listeners need to hear that too, because you go into different states. You don't just stay in Texas. You have helped people in various states. I mean, perhaps all over United States, but you will actually go there to assist them. And often with no charge. And you're a nonprofit organization,
Patient
but you
advocacy.
do accept funds.
We're completely not nonprofit, and we have a patient advocacy team that helps out wherever we can. And we found that this is an area where there's real lacking for these families that don't have anybody else to turn to, and so our patient advocacy team has helped patients, and we have some good Christians that we work with across the country, but unfortunately the pro-life movement has not moved into this space as much. There's a lot going on with abortion and abortion pills and things we need to do on that front. But this is definitely an area where we come alongside the family, help them communicate. We have 2 cases right now where we're helping the family in Texas communicate with the hospital. And, there's all kinds of reasons that, that the hospital has kind of doesn't like to provide treatment. But helping appropriate facility, several different options, but to value that patient and let the family decide which, especially when it comes to life-sustaining treatment, which is food and water, ventilator, the
basics.
Yeah.
These asking for, extraordinary, and that's what we fight for on these patients. And unfortunately, doctors still say it's not worth it. They'll use the term futility. They'll kind of throw that out. We want to take those treatments away. And we help patients all over Texas and advise.
Yeah, I mean, if you didn't need those types of care, you wouldn't be in the hospital. Like, you wouldn't be at home, right? You'd be at a spa, like, or you'd be at home. Like, for them to say that it's kind of insane. How much work do you do in the space of, like Marsha with the hastening of death for the either elderly or sick, like in hospice or nursing homes? You see this. It's there was actually a nun that wrote a book about stealth euthanasia, and
right.
Ron Cancer also, right? The whole stealth euthanasia. Families don't always know it's happening, but the legislation that exists is a real sticky wicket. It's a mess. It protects those who would do something like that. And in Texas in particular, it's very hard to sue a hospital. We have all layers and layers of tort reform.
Right. Well, because we help these families, we see firsthand where the breakdown in the system is, where the power imbalance is. So getting your medical records, your right to a second opinion, your right to object to certain testing. I mean, one of the big fights is whether I have the right to stop a hospital from using the apnea test on a loved one. That apnea test is going to do more damage to a brain injured patient than it is going to help. But there's a debate going on about whether you have to get consent for that. And well, that's a policy question, right? We can address that through law of saying, no, even on testing for neurological diagnosis, you have to get consent. And so there's a lot of things like that are not big culture war, pro-euthanasia, anti-euthanasia, but small things that help us do the best to protect our loved ones in the hospital. Like I said, access to medical records is huge. If I'm trying to transfer a patient, I can't do it without accurate medical records and getting them in a timely manner. And so that's a policy, we're talking to legislators about it right now, is how can we speed up that process so that our families are fully capable of making these important decisions to move their loved one to another facility. The same thing with testing, the same thing with a right to a second opinion, and then stopping hospitals from the overreach of taking treatment away, even if they disagree with the decision a patient's family has made.
Well,
Yeah.
I think one of the things is the patient and their family, they don't know that they have any rights, and they believe everything they're told because they've been taught that if the doctor says it's the procedure we need to do, then they just agree to it because they don't realize that you cannot just trust what you're told, and that knowledge is power, and you have to question everything they tell you because they're not always there to do what's best for you. The HIPAA law is thrown out. It is not a do no harm. It is how much money can I make and how quickly can I put in somebody else in a bed, whether that's hospice or the hospital. And the hospital does not want those people coming in, time after time for breathing issues or heart issues or broken bones. That's how they wind up getting turned over to hospice. But that's the sad thing. People don't know that they have rights. And when you're talking about getting the medical records, they need to get the medical records while your loved one is alive, because you have the right to know what medication they're going to give them, and you have the right to consent to it or to say, I don't want them getting that medication. And if you say there's something else that you want, then why are they refusing to give you a different antibiotic, for instance, and they insist on giving you something you don't want? Where are you right?
Informed consent has become something of the past, but you also have this this situation, and this is like this all over the nation, not just in Texas, but where administrators and CEOs of hospitals they're basically practicing medicine without a license, because they're making these policies that force protocols and things like that that are harmful and not helpful to a patient, and they will not let a doctor deviate. So that's a problem. And just having a patient bill of rights that doesn't have poison pills in it. I mean, Senator Bob Hall in Texas here has been amazing in paying attention to what's going on in hospitals and stuff. He intervened in we had that police standoff, and he intervened for us and called and put his eyes on the situation at Plano Medical City. So he is very big advocate for the medical freedom movement. But even the bills that we have, for example, John, the no patient left alone, or act that we had in Texas in 2021, it had gone into effect. It had these loopholes in it that actually gave the doctors more power, and I was harmed by that. So it said, the bill on the one hand said you can't isolate a patient, they have to be allowed to have at least one person there, right? But then in the next paragraph, this is common with bills, it said, unless the doctor writes an order upon examination, and that order is good for 5 days to isolate the patient, and then it can be renewed every 5 days. Well, what do you think the doctors are doing? They're writing an order every 5 days to isolate you, but they didn't have that power to do that before the bill was passed. So it's like those types of things. It's good to have these bills, but they can't have loopholes that give power. We need clean patient bill, a patient bill of rights that is constitutional and allows the family and the patient to make those decisions that forces the hospitals, the administrators, the doctors, the social workers to give informed consent. Maybe even having an advocate, like today, if you want an advocate in a hospital, right? The hospital gives you an advocate, and that advocate's job is to cover the hospital's rear end, not advocate for the patient, right? So
Right.
all of those things need to be, it can't be part of that whole ball of racking up the bill and, and making money for the hospital. Somehow you have to get to a place where we have to make hospitals safe again. And part of that has to be taking away these amazing, huge, multi levels of immunity where you can't touch a hospital. We're doing a X Spaces actually on Saturday that is called that, murder without consequence, right? There are no consequences to what they do because there are so many layers of immunity. If you strip that, nobody should have immunity. I don't have immunity. You don't have immunity, right? Like we, the people, don't have immunity, and neither should they. So how have y'all looked at like and even if it's just Texas, like Texas has so many layers of it, it's incredible. Have you looked at how we dismantle that at all?
Yeah, I mean, we are doing it from the advanced directives side. That's been the biggest focus. Is that was the most dangerous one. Is that was a safe harbor. I mean that,
right?
So that there were no lawsuits, like you said. I mean that's the whole point of the 10-day law, was so that doctors could not get sued after taking the treatment away from a patient. And so we're looking at that. But on our DNR bill, for example, in 2017, we added criminal penalties if a doctor or a medical professional, put in a forced DNR or a secret DNR on a patient. We put in criminal penalties, and the medical community lost their mind. I mean, it was like they never have this level of accountability. And that's really unheard of. And because of political pressure, and we were able to utilize, the force of the pro-life movement, we got that passed. But that is very, like you're saying, Gail, that's very rare to have teeth on these laws.
Right.
What is that bill?
Do you know? 2017 was our Do Not Resuscitate Order bill. And it was, now it's in chapter 166 of the Health and Safety Code. And it's, that you have to give your explicit consent for a Do Not Resuscitate order, because we saw practically there were secret DNRs and there were forced DNRs.
I lived it in 2021. They forced that DNR, even though luckily my daughter kept looking at the this is interesting. I didn't know that law existed, and now I'm going to have to look it up, because when I was in the hospital in 2021, my daughter kept calling me or texting me and saying, Mom, they have a DNR on you. And I would tell the doctors and the nurses, I'm not a DNR. I'm a full code. And they would say, no, you're not. Like, that's scary as heck, John, when you're laying in bed and the doctor's telling you you're a DNR. And in my records, the doctor notates that I said I was a full code, but my record said I was a DNR. And that's what they're going to look at when and if you code. And so that was one of the scariest parts of being in the hospital isolated, was knowing that my full code, me being a full code, that they were not going to honor it. Like they were going to get me to the point of needing that and then not do it. And so I'm going to look up that bill, because
well, let's talk, because we fought very hard that you have the absolute power to revoke any DNR, and that there's only a few ways that DNR can be authorized. That was a big fight in Texas. But sometimes they look at the medical standard, what other hospitals do and what their policies are rather than the law. And that's why we have to add the penalties, and we have to ask senators like Bob Hall to hold them accountable, not just to do what every other doctor is doing in other states, but do what the law requires.
Right, because clearly I was not end of life. And there was a nurse in Plano, Texas a few years ago who went to prison for changing DNRs on elderly patients. Right. So yeah, like it's been prosecuted. And here we've had that. There's probably more than just my case during that time period in Texas. So I'm going to take a look at that, and I'm going to find out who else had that happen where they changed the DNR, because there were a few people who came to betrayalprojectusa.org to tell their stories who had ethics committees change the DNR of their loved one, the DNR status of their loved one. And so it was by committee, and I'm going to find those people, because now I have this little, now I'm going to be going down this rabbit hole, John.
Yeah, nugget. Yeah. Would that be with the hospice people as well? Would that pertain in Texas to hospice people that are told they have to sign a DNR in order to enroll in hospice, which is not true?
So yes, I mean, they can make admission dependent upon the DNR, but at the end of the day, you have to sign, you have to authorize the DNR. I mean, that can be their private policy, but they cannot, and that's really the gate to get into any kind of healthcare system. But they cannot, by law, just put a DNR on you without your consent.
Okay. But it is also illegal to force someone to sign a DNR to enroll in hospice, but the people don't know that when they're forcing them and saying sign a DNR. They just go ahead and sign it. But there have been cases where people did not sign the DNR, and it was put in by the doctor or by the nurse, and they say, oh yes, the patient said they didn't want to be revived, when that's not true, and they signed it for them.
Mm-hmm. And Marsha, that's kind of the practical takeaway for us to protect our loved ones, is to ask those questions. You're not being paranoid, you're actually caring for your loved ones. To ask, have there been any tests on their cognitive abilities, to make sure that you're not going to have that brain death problem. Is there any do not resuscitate orders on the patient? Is there DNR, has that been discussed? To ask these questions.
Right.
Has there been any involvement with the ethics committee, because that sometimes is the trigger to start a countdown on the patient. We have at TexasRightToLife.com these very practical, pieces of advice of, here are the questions you ask to protect your loved ones. And it's not paranoia. It is just being a good steward of that authority you have as your, representing your loved one there, being their medical power of attorney, or just being, their surrogate decision maker. And unfortunately, we have to be prepared to be alert in those situations where a lot of our friends just wish they could trust what the doctor says and just, not make waves and just, think that they have all the best intentions. Unfortunately, we do have to kind of be vigilant whenever we have a loved one in a healthcare institution.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to reiterate something real quick here, because there are people that put a lot of their faith into the governmental system to come to their rescue. Like I'm seeing a lot of red flags from District of Criminals with, RFK Jr., rubbing elbows with Albert Bourla. And I don't want to get into all the rest of it, but I just think that people are just being very super naive when it comes to the healthcare system and the government saying, oh yeah, we're going to get rid of certain things, but they're not really doing that. Things are actually accelerating to a different level. I mean, if you watched everything that happened in Davos last week, you would know that.
Yeah. So So John, we look at countries like like Canada with their MAID, medical assistance in dying, which sounds very nice. It sounds so pleasant, right? But it's really
Oh man.
Peaceful.
and right and I I remember when that went into effect, and I was like, that would never happen in America, right?
Yeah, right.
Right. And then I started looking at, surely that's a felony in every state, right? Assisted suicide. And then I learned it's not. And in fact, I think in Texas it's a misdemeanor. So like there's all these different, some states don't even have laws against it one way or the other. So that was an eye opener for me to know that there are states that are trying to pass it, and these things are like, oh, the terminally ill, it's a big slippery slope, like everything is.
Yeah.
It starts with the terminally ill, and then next thing you know, it's a teenager who doesn't feel like they fit in at school, right?
Right.
They're depressed, right?
Yeah, it's actually incriminating what they're doing with that.
So what's your thoughts on not that I always hate to pass laws just for laws, because they always mess them up, right? There's always some kind of weird, bizarre thing in the law that gives power where it shouldn't be. But
wait a minute, Gail, are you saying they put corkscrews in those bills?
yeah, I'm like, so like I'm gonna vote for people who say I'm gonna get rid of 20 laws, right? Like, and not pass any. But these types of things, there is a need for some level of protection against those types of actions, because if there's no law against it, then it can be done, right?
Yeah.
And
I mean, we have very clear laws about assisted suicide, about mercy killing, but the medical institutions in Texas have found they don't need that. They can rush to a brain death diagnosis and then withdraw treatment. They could, lean on a family to agree to take away treatment. They could go to the ethics committee and start a 25-day countdown. They don't need a big fight with, about assisted suicide. They have other tools. And so that's really what we are kind of focusing on is, how do we level the playing field? How do we give the families better tools to fight back against that? Whereas 13 states have had that debate and we have lost. 13 other states say, yes, you can have assisted suicide. You're not going to see a debate like that here in Texas because the medical establishment has these other ways that are less obvious to further their kind of anti-life ethics and their devaluing of that patient in a hospital. And that's what we're talking about is how. But we philosophy is moving, is progressing. Even this last year. And new states are embracing this idea that some patients are better off dead, that some patients, are more of a very vigilant about. But in Texas, it's even more difficult because we're not going to have an open debate. We actually have to be watching the issues that you and I are talking about here with hospice, with us, with the ICU, what's going on in the ICU. That's really where at Texas Right to Life, we want to make sure we're paying very close attention. How do we protect life in those circumstances in that context?
Yeah. So like, I know in the medical freedom side of things, like when we look at certain legislation, number one, I see people jumping on the bandwagon of legislation before one word's written, just the title alone. And I'm like, wait, before you ask us to support it, let's see what the words are. Let's be involved in writing it. So, but, we try to encourage people to, I always say, be in your legislator's business, right? So be in their business all the time. When they say, we've got this bill, we're going to introduce it, read all the words, because
Yeah.
words mean things, right? Like read the language and read every paragraph and make sure you understand it. And if you have
Right.
to get somebody from that office, they will explain it to you, and
Yep.
think about how that bill will, what will happen when it's passed, how will it be implemented, what does it mean in real life, because you may
Right.
want to go and ask for something to be removed or added, or it could be a perfectly good bill and be killed by one paragraph because that paragraph steps on our constitutional rights or does more damage.
Yep.
So
Absolutely.
do
And,
you
and your legislators do care, Gail. I mean, they do need to hear from you. They're always up for election, right? They always need to be, listening to the voters. And I've been in an elected official's office when, their staff is keeping tallies of how many calls they're getting on a specific issue.
Yep.
And they know that one call represents, 300 people in their district that feel the same way. Even though 300 people aren't calling them, they kind of have an equation in their mind of, if we get 12 calls on an issue, it's a big issue.
Yeah.
So you just think about that. If you and 11 of your friends make a call to one office, they think like, oh man, this is a huge issue. We got to get this right. And maybe we're disillusioned about what happens in DC, but at least in Austin, these elected officials really do depend on your feedback. And so it is a kind of a call for us to be paying attention at the state level.
It can sway an issue, and like for us, I'm always telling people, and do not discount going into a Democrat's office, because for us, people were killed in hospitals on the left just as they were on the right, and so what we try to go down with a mix of people. And most people, let's face it, most people who are affected by these types, the sanctity of life issues, they never thought about politics one day in their life, probably didn't vote, probably didn't, now they do, but they didn't think about, I happen to have been involved in politics before it happened to me, but most people never, I had to drag my husband into politics kicking and screaming, and I still have to do that, but because it's not his thing. Like me, it's like the Super Bowl. But it does matter when you have lots of people. The more people you have call on an issue, that's why you call on a certain day. They do. I've been there too, where they do count, they do count the tally. When you go down there, you drop the cards for, against, whatever. And if they have open, if they're taking testimony on an issue, it's important for real people to go down and sign up. And even you get 3 minutes, so pack it in to, the top things you need to say. But that's important, because they do listen to that too. And I have been down there where there's been public comment on a bill, and where hundreds of people showed up. They didn't all get to speak. It matters when you're sitting up in the gallery, right? Like, plan it so like everybody's wearing the same color shirt, and they know, like, let them know, like, the supporters of that bill or the people opposing that bill are wearing a certain color shirt or have shirts made or whatever. I mean, that worked for the bill to stop surgical transing of children. They all wore Save Texas Kids red shirts, sat in the gallery in a certain spot so the legislators could see you, and it has an effect. It has an extreme effect.
Yep. And this is not about a right and left paradigm. This is about people's lives.
Yeah.
Well, and it's about taking action. And that's the problem. What we see is that there's only a handful of people that will take action, and the rest sit back and wait for that handful to take the action. And I appreciate what you just said, John, about picking up the phone and calling, because if you don't, then they don't know what your opinion is. And if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem.
And it's the easiest lift. It's the easiest lift you'll ever have. I mean, pick up your phone and call, register your they're very nice too. Like, and sometimes they'll, like, if you give them enough feedback on enough bills, sometimes they'll send you the bill. They'll send you a bill. They'll be like, hey, send this bill off to this person who's always given us feedback, or this group or whatever, and get, before it's even ready. So you get to know your representatives and your state senators, because they live among you, right? Like, they, go see them at their local office, get to know them.
Well, I think the bill, the
And I would just
essential.
Say it, John.
I was just going to say that don't assume just because they're a Democrat, they're not going to want to be helping you with this issue. I've some of the Democrats that vote against me whenever it comes to pregnant women and babies, they vote with me on patients' rights and what's going on in hospitals. And they are very very big patient advocates, and want to make sure you have access to, the records, that your loved one keeps the ventilator. And so don't give up on any elected official.
Right.
Make sure that you're trying, if they represent you, they should be hearing from you.
That's right. And at the very least, they can never say, I didn't know that the problem existed. Right. Mm-hmm. So if be respectful and kind in the way that you present what you need, because they could be on your side. Maybe that Democrat that's in office had a grandma that this happened to, or a cousin that this happened to. You don't know. You don't know what their personal experience is on that, but also from the perspective of not allowing them to have plausible deniability. The biggest shift I saw in people having that mind-blown moment about abortion was when Abby Johnson had that, do you remember in Times Square when they did that ultrasound and had it up on the big jumbo screen?
Yeah.
Millions of people. It was like, people were like, I knew people who had been pro-choice who were like, wow, that is the technology has brought people to the conclusion that there's a baby in there. And right. That's why when people see with their eyes and they can't deny that it's a baby, when you get the mother and the father, or the mother, trust me guys, nobody's going into these women are going into these clinics and they're not going in alone. Somebody, the boyfriend, the parent, the friend, somebody's pushing them to do it. It's why they come out crying, right? Mm-hmm. They didn't want to go in to begin with. Yeah. So when you get them to have that ultrasound, it's the evidence with their own eyes. They can't deny that it's a baby, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Can we take a pause? Because I want to show everybody a quick 30-second reel of couples and women who have decided to keep their children. And this is awesome. Here we go. I just wanted to show a quick clip of that so that we can reiterate that life is so vital.
It is. And I'm going to tell you, I have never met a woman who regretted having her baby, but I have met plenty who regretted having abortions. And, they go, thank God for places like Rachel's Vineyard and those healing places where afterwards they can get healing. St. Joseph's House for men, because men feel it too. I mean, I've seen men outside abortion clinics trying to stop their parent of a, person being, and it's interesting too. Like my granddaughter, Naomi, she's 12 now. When my daughter was pregnant, she was told all these horrible things, like your baby, something's gonna be wrong with your baby, and all these, and she didn't care. She was like, I'm gonna love my baby no matter what's wrong with my baby. Naomi was born about as perfect can be, and every time I see her dance at her recitals, because she's a beautiful dancer, I literally cry because I think of how much pressure there was on my daughter to abort and we were a very pro-life family, but the doctor put the pressure on my daughter
Wow.
to abort this. And
That's
so when she had her next baby, she didn't go to that doctor, but
Mhm.
but it's amazing. Doctors get it wrong all the time. Like
Yes, they do.
get it wrong. Yes. So, there's this big push to get rid of the handicap, Down syndrome. You must see that all the time, John.
Yep.
Mm.
Yeah, we actually give more.
John's gonna have to say it over. You're gonna have to say it over, John, because you're rubber banding.
Okay. Whenever the family gets a bad diagnosis,
Mm.
have a disability that will help them choose life and help them support that baby and maybe choose perinatal palliative care if that's the right option for them. Life affirming options instead of just saying your best chance is to, take
Mhm.
the life of the baby and
Yeah.
try diagnosis.
Well, I don't get how we can say if somebody a pregnant woman is driving in a car and she's hit by a drunk driver, for instance, or carjacked, and they die, that it's a double homicide. So if it's two people that you just killed, then how can we say that a baby in the womb is not a person? How can we have two laws that
Right.
are totally opposite of each other?
I agree, and as is indicative in Texas here, so all the nonsense that these women's clinics, these abortion factories, is what they really were. Would, as much as they would say, "Oh, abortion is this tiny piece of what we do," tiny piece. As soon as it became hard to do these abortions and then impossible to do these abortions, they closed up one after another, after another, after another. And now you have these shameful pastors that have set up these clinics to try to help women travel out of state to abort their babies. But it doesn't work as well. It's still something we got to fight. And the of course the what is it? The mail order Plan B is a problem, right? But now women are also there was a whole lot of hype about you're taking away women's choice. Women are not choosing this for themselves. They're just not, guys. Like they're most of the time it is somebody choosing it for them, a boyfriend, a parent, a friend, pressuring them. So now they can say, oh, I can't get an abortion because it's Texas, or I'm past the heartbeat. The heartbeat is already, I'm past the time I can even have an abortion. They have something to fall back on, the law, to protect themselves. Even I have seen that time and time again, where women, they don't want to have that abortion, and now they have all of these reasons that they can give their family, and once the baby comes.
And the majority of them are not from rape or incest,
Right.
or that the mother's life is going to be in danger. That's not the majority of these. It's like you say, they're
Right.
pressured. Am I going to have enough money to take care of the child? I already have 3 children and I can't take a 4th child. And I was so proud of JD Vance, announcing that Marsha is pregnant again, and he is so excited about it. And then who was it that came on and was who was it that said she hoped that Carolyn Levitt's baby that she died?
Oh yeah,
during-
that was some nurse out of Florida, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? Do they not realize when you say something like that, you just made yourself subhuman to be talking like that?
Mhm.
But here's the
Yeah.
thing, like the whole, as Christians, we look at the sanctity of life issue, and we have a definition of what life is and the value of life in our Christian viewpoint. from womb to tomb, it's God is the author of life and death. But in a secular world where people don't believe in God, there's an entirely different viewpoint on sanctity of life and what's value, right? Like it's
Right.
they look at it as, you're not living a good life if you're disabled, when that's not true. That's not true. The whole Down syndrome when Denmark was trying to be Down syndrome free by 2030, and so they encouraged the abortions and things. That could you imagine? Like, it's the most Down syndrome people. They only have the ability to love. It's like, I mean, that's clearly from God, right? But if you're not looking at it from God's perspective, you're looking at it in a secular world. You're thinking, well, what will they ever earn? How much money will you earn in your life? That's what values. Is that mother, is she rich enough to raise a child, or to afford a child? Lots of kids grow up poor, and they're the best people ever because their mamas were strong Christian women.
Yeah, on that note, we're going to come right back, and we're going to continue this conversation, because this is important, folks. And I'm glad that you have stuck around to watch and listen. This is a great conversation, and I just appreciate Dr. John Seago for giving us his time today. This is awesome. We really appreciate that. Thank you so much for being here. And we're coming right back with more after this. Texas Right to Life.
Follow us on all of the socials at VinDog Radio. We'll be right back with more VinDog Radio Live after this.
Yes, sir!
Hello, my friends. VinDog here. Thank you for your support of the broadcast. I just want to tell you that in advance. And as you're watching, if you feel it led on your heart by the Lord to support the broadcast, yes, I am hitting the QR codes for you right there. Just to click on them. You can support us by hitting the Cash App, Venmo, or PayPal. That's right, Cash App, Venmo, or PayPal. And thank you so much for your prayers, because that's the number one thing we need. Thank you so much for supporting VinDog Radio Live. VinDog Radio popping off. God bless. Hey, what's happening, everybody? VinDog here. Now go to my website right now and order some merch for yourself. Hundreds of items to choose from. Men, women, children, pets, you name it, we got it for everybody. Yes, indeed. That is vindogradio.myspreadshop.com. VINNDOGG radio.myspreadshop.com. Log on today and grab your gear. We have the latest. Yes, if you love Jesus, get your gear. vindogradio.myspreadshop.com. That's vindogradio.myspreadshop.com. Don't delay. Get shopping today.
Now, back to the man on a mission for the King of Glory, Jesus Christ.
Yes, thank you. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to continue this conversation, and I love the fact that we have Dr. John Seago here with us. This is a very informative episode that we have done in a while. I mean, man, the right to life is so important on every level.
One of the things that when we were talking about getting people into facilities, I just want to bring up for any of the listeners that are not aware that Irma Rappaport has been working on an Essential Caregivers Act that she is putting forth and working with the different legislators, so that if we wind up having a pandemic in the future, that a person, an advocate, will be allowed inside the facility with their loved ones. And this is a federal bill that she's working on. So that's another one that you can contact your representative and tell them that you agree with the Essential Caregivers Act, so that you can go in with your loved one under any circumstances in the future, at least one person. And I just want to plug that in because that's important. Have you heard about that, John?
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of tools that we want to give these people of being. Oh, sorry. being able to represent their families,
Right.
and there's plenty of good directives out there. There's plenty of good, ways to do it. We have some at Texas Right to Life. We use a Will to Live document. But you were just telling me about a new one, Marsha, the Do Not Consent, kind of tools. And, there's things that we have to use to really be prepared for these, because, you're not facing them. You're not thinking about these things until you're in the hospital with a loved one. And so I appreciate you bringing that up.
Yeah, the I do not consent. Laura Bartlett's got the I do not consent form. It's at idonotconsentform.com, actually. And so that's a must-have for people, who, because it goes into effect while you're still able to make decisions for yourself. And then Halo Voice has one as well. That is I do not want to be an organ donor, or I don't want the apnea test and all of that. Right. One of the things about bills, though, as well, is people have to follow them through, because sometimes the death of a bill happens during the process where they write the rules around it. Some unelected group of people go and they write rules on how that bill that just passed is going to be implemented. And there can be some real tricky stuff in there. So you can't just be like, yay, the bill passed. You have to get involved in what those are as well.
Yeah, and we do that at Texas Right to Life. If anybody's on our list, there are times when we'll ask you to be calling Health and Human Service Commission, or putting in public comments at the Health and Human Service Commission, who is doing a rulemaking process. And paying attention the whole way through, Gail.
Right.
Yeah, and that's awesome.
Your website. Can you give them your website?
Yeah, TexasRightToLife.com. We have a whole patient advocate portal where you can request help if you're in a difficult situation. If you have a disagreement in a hospital, where you can ask for our team to help you. There's also resources there. It links to our podcast, where we have, very short videos that just say, hey, here are the questions to ask when you're in a hospital. And here are the red flags to look for if your loved one's in the hospital. And so we really try to, have plenty of those resources at TexasRightToLife.com.
Right.
John, you are a true man of the Lord, and you are, you're fighting for the right for unborn babies. You're fighting for the rights of just human life, period. Now there are certain pastors that say, well, I'm all about, the right to life, but I don't want to get involved. What is your message to them? Because they're the guys that are on the pulpits.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's very simple. This is not a political issue. This is a spiritual issue. And as Gail was saying earlier, it's either we, believe the Bible that God is the giver of life, or we don't. And so, the government is just one tool. Loving our neighbors means, yes, caring for them personally, but also it means using my political voice, to make just laws that will protect them or make them more vulnerable. And so, if we read the Bible with our eyes open, we're really going to see we have to take these issues seriously, and there's really nowhere to hide for those pastors. I was preaching at a church just 2 weeks ago on Sanctity of Life Sunday, and there are plenty of churches in Texas that will embrace vision of standing up for all life. And if your church doesn't, I would encourage you, have a conversation with your leaders and say, hey, I'm reading the Bible, created in the image of God. I'm reading in the New Testament. James says this is true religion, to care for the widows and, to care for the orphans. What are we doing? What are we doing for these vulnerable humans? And I would encourage you, don't just leave. Try to help your leaders, have the courage to get involved in these issues. And so I would definitely encourage our Christian friends here to take that up and make sure your church is one that's going to read all of the Bible and address those issues, because this is a spiritual issue, not just a political or legal one.
Absolutely, 100%.
Right. And I think there's, a lot of times there's just a fear of bringing out a conversation like that, whereas they will talk about abortion and the sanctity of a baby's life, but they don't want to talk to their parishioners about the end of life when someone's getting old, and then they wind up being put into hospice and given the comfort kit drugs, which drugs them into a coma, and they die from that. Well, as a pastor, you have everybody sitting in front of you. They're going to listen to you if you tell them there are potential dangers. And, you're not calling everybody out and saying everybody's a murderer, but you're saying you need to investigate, you need to pay attention, you need to trust your gut. And if somebody's sitting up and talking and eating and, walking around, and then the next day they're slumped over and they can't eat, they can't drink, and they're not taking their medicine, there's something seriously wrong, and that is not the way people die.
That's right.
That's not a natural death. That is a drug-induced coma, and people need to be aware of that.
And Marsha, I would just go back to something you and I were talking about the other day about if we're reading our Bibles about us caring for others and taking the burdens of others on, that's really the hardest part here, is kind of caring for our loved ones in the hospital. It's not pleasant. It's not fun. It is a burden, right? To see your loved one in a hospital and to, push back on that. But that's what we're called to do. I was given the example of my dad, who fell down the stairs and hurt his shoulder a couple of months ago. And he said, I don't want to be a burden on the family. And I was like, when I was a baby, I was a burden on my parents, right? I was a big burden on them. And now for me to have to go help them, sure, it's inconvenient. It's not fun. It takes some time and some effort. And it's, really, painful to see my dad in a condition like that. But that's what it is to be a Christian, to love one another. And so if our pastors are coming at it from this angle, and not, a political angle, this is my party, this is what my party believes, but just applying scripture to how we care in these real life situations, that really guides us, Marsha, into decisions that you and I have been talking about, of going into the hospital and making the hard decisions and being there, looking out for our loved ones.
That's awesome that you mentioned that, John, because I was just looking at some passages from the Apostle Paul where he tells us to, we're supposed to, take care of one another. He did that when he was a tent maker. He never asked anybody for anything, but he always wanted to take care of others, and he encouraged other believers to take care of one another.
Yeah. I want to ask you about a topic of, so there's this problem, particularly in America, with regard to, there's two ethics problems that kind of are connected. One is embryos and one is cloning. How are you all involved in those types of there's not a lot of legislation around it, right? So where are you guys, where is Texas Right to Life involved in those issues?
You're getting deep now.
Gal, thanks.
No, the embryo thing keeps me up at night, actually, to be honest.
Well, the easy on-ramp is just the destruction of embryos. Is any practice that destruction of, even if it's because we're going to discover, some cure or some medical breakthrough, that cannot be made at the sacrifice of human beings.
Right.
We can't hope that we're helping humans in the future by sacrificing, these embryonic babies right now. That our lives, our personhood, our value starts before birth, that it starts in the womb, right? God talks to Jeremiah, he talks to David, he talks to these people saying, I knew you before you were born, right? You were a person. You weren't something that was going to become David. You were David in the womb, where Christians that embryo, that's the baby. So we got to protect that. So these practices you're mentioning, whether it's leftover embryos after IVF, if it's research in the lab, or if it's something like a cloning practice where we have to create embryos and then destroy them to get the stem cells out, that those practices require the destruction of embryos. And so that's kind of where we get involved is, the easy low-hanging fruit is let's not pay for it. We pay for a lot of scientific research. We pay for a lot of higher ed. Let's just make sure we're not using taxpayer dollars for these destructive practices. I think there's more we can do, but that's the bare minimum, right?
Yeah. So one approach I really love about Texas Right to Life, and when we were setting up the structure of our organization, Betrayal Project USA, we looked at several organizations and said, we want to run like these organizations and have these types of ethics and these types of plans. And Texas Right to Life was obviously one of them that we looked at. And one of the things I loved about the mission is the aspect of education leading to change, right? So you put a huge focus on educating people about certain laws, certain things, the life, all of these things. And I think what I've seen in Texas, I think your success has been largely fueled by that effort of doing the work of educating the public first, and then getting the action. And so so I know you educate on college campuses, but oftentimes by the time kids get to college, they've been indoctrinated in our indoctrination centers, which everybody, I'm just going to make everybody homeschool. You want to homeschool because but they've already
You're safer.
Yeah, you're
and they're trying to infiltrate that right now as we
I
speak.
know they are, but we're big homeschoolers, so homeschooling is the way to go. You can do it, mamas. But are you in any of the high schools in Texas and getting them at that earlier age to talk to them about
Yeah, you're absolutely right. We have a huge ministry on college campuses, but we are also targeting high school students. We have a day camp, it's a summer camp model for high schoolers where they go and they hear from pro-lifers and they, kind of hear from experts and learn pro-life stories and pro-life apologetics, and they start practicing that as high schoolers. We also have a Convention for Life event in the Woodlands every summer. And so in July, we'll have our Convention for Life in the Woodlands where we bring in experts and we train on pro-life apologetics, on Christian theology, Christian anthropology, how should Christians think about these things? And then we bring in, pregnancy centers so you can know, hey, there's a pregnancy center close by we can volunteer for. And that's our Convention for Life. And you can get information at texasrighttolife.com. But yeah, we're always trying to educate because you're right. If we don't educate, we may get a good law, but it's going to be repealed in just a few years.
John, I was going to ask you this too, since you brought that up, brother. The program that you guys do you ever think of say for instance, if parents want to send their kids in from different states, if a lot of people that can be donors can set up like scholarship programs for that?
Yeah. So right now we do scholarships for Texas campuses, to have their pro-life group. But for our Convention for Life, we have buses that come from all over the state where people, kind of get a church group together and they come to our convention to have a day-long kind of boot camp of, how can we improve? And a lot of these things, it's just how do we argue them? How do we discuss them in a way that is compelling? And how do we respond to some of these new, questions that are coming up, some of these new attacks on life? And we would love to partner. If anybody wants to get a group together or, put a kind of scholarship together for sponsoring a group, we would love to help with that. It's a great event every summer. In addition to all the dinners and but the Convention for Life is real practical takeaways, how to be a pro-life ambassador.
I love the emphasis on teaching apologetics, because I've obviously, we took our grandchildren to a lot of things, even as soon as they could understand, praying outside of the abortion clinics. A lot of our friends, homeschoolers, they bring their kids to that stuff, taking them to the Capitol so they could see how our government does not work and does work, right? The good, the bad, and the ugly. And those types of things. And there's oftentimes that other side of the issue when you're outside of the 40 Days for Life, or wherever whenever you're outside an abortion clinic or you're advocating for any type of sanctity of life issue, you get people who are very aggressive towards you sometimes. They're very angry that you're there. And the one thing I noticed with regard to the abortion fight particularly, that anger usually comes from women who are struggling with the choice that they made, right? Somewhere in that woman's past is typically a boyfriend did not marry her when she got pregnant and talked her into an abortion, and she regrets it. And that's almost all the time. Like when you take time to remain calm and not hate that person and engage in a dialogue, and what to talk about, and you use some active listening, and you listen to all their vile stuff, and then have a conversation, you'd be surprised how many times it comes out that they had an abortion and it's not bothering them whatsoever, but except for it is, right? Like,
the old saying, Gail, hurt people hurt people.
Yeah, right. And they have to either defend abortion as a whole or do some soul searching to say to themselves, wow, I killed my baby.
Well, and Gail, be sensitive to the medical ethics debates as well, because think of how many people have had a parent or a grandparent or an aunt or uncle or somebody in the hospital, and they've been in that decision-making capacity in that chair, and they may have said, okay, I agree, they seem brain dead, we can make them an organ donor, or okay, I agree, let's take the ventilator off. And now they're thinking about it critically, and they're wondering, did I make a mistake? I mean, so there's a lot of grace in that conversation, still being truthful, being honest, not shying away from the truth, but also, like you're saying, being mindful of kind of the personal experiences of who you're talking to.
Yeah, that's why I tend to, always think, what, when people are in those types of situations, I tend to go back to the word where, where to show people grace, because that they're in need of that, especially if they've actually already done that.
And we hear that a lot, like because me and my husband and my daughter, we tell our story everywhere, because we feel like these stories of hospital homicides have to get out, and we hear from thousands of people that had the same experience. But we hear that a lot, where people are like, I wish I would have stormed the ICU and got my loved one out, right? Like they always say that. And I have to remind them, like, hey, you have the information that you had at the time. You were under complete, they made it chaos for you and then made you make decisions. And, my husband was a retired nurse. My husband was an ex-Army captain. Like he had all these skills in which he could do things. And it came with a price. My husband was prosecuted for what he did, and he never committed a crime in his life. Misdemeanor, right? So it's not like the father, the story in Texas here, John, when the dad didn't want to take his son off life support and went in with a gun. And I can't remember when this was, but he served time for it, but his son's alive, right? Like
it was worth it.
Yeah.
Because he saved his son. Right.
But to your point, you make the decisions that you make with the information you have, even if something doesn't seem right. You can't second guess that stuff.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we can only be a better advocate next time, and be more informed and know what questions to ask whenever. Because, you were talking about, how many people are in kind of connected to abortion, or all of the people that are going to be impacted by a medical decision, a decision to continue life-sustaining treatment, to withdraw it, a decision to, do more testing on a brain injury and push back against. I mean, that's a lot. All of, who
we're losing some of what you're saying, Jan. Yeah, you're rubber banding a little bit again, and because Vindog's not pedaling fast enough, or something.
We're still dealing with the snowstorm here in Austin.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you guys are under that. Oh, my.
Yeah. And Austin, Austin's a weird city. It probably sucks up the bandwidth anyways. Just the what's the saying? Keep Austin weird.
Yeah.
Oh my.
That's our.
That's the city's motto.
But I want to address the quality of life, because when someone is considered brain dead, or if they're in hospice, and when we were talking earlier about the DNR, then the quality of somebody's life is their quality, and that needs to be asked of them, and not for a doctor to be making that decision. And if someone says that, they're okay with being in a wheelchair, or not being able to, do certain functions, and, having assistance, then nobody else has the right to push them into a situation where they have to go and have assisted suicide. And earlier we were talking about the number. There are 10 plus DC that currently allow assisted suicide or medical aid in dying. They don't like for you to call it assisted suicide. Well, that's what it is. And there are 10 more states that are considering it going to have the MAID or assisted suicide. And people are so easily convinced that they're a burden to somebody else, and that you need to just go so that you don't, you're not a burden to your children or your siblings or somebody else. And I think that's why we have so many people that will sign up to be murdered, assisted suicide. And since we have hospice that does it in every state, I don't see where we need any state to do it, because hospice will do it for them. And for people that think getting assisted suicide with the medication that they're going to give you, that it's going to be painless and it's going to be quick, that is not true either. So I think there's a lot of education that people need to have on all fronts.
Oh yeah. And they call it, they give it these nicey nice names, like death with dignity, or dignity in dying, medical assistance in dying. It's suicide. It's murder. It's, for a Christian in particular, it's a no. It's a hard no.
Yep.
You can't.
And
do
you're
it.
asking doctors to do it.
Yeah. Well, they stopped taking, They stopped taking the Hippocratic Oath when Roe v. Wade went into effect, because you couldn't take an oath to do no harm and do abortions, and so they
That's right.
Yeah, and so they modified it until it's so watered down that now they're killing everybody.
Right. Well, it's like Soylent Green, in that movie where they had euthanasia, and they would just go and sit, lay on a table and say, I want to see flowers and I want to hear Mozart playing. And Saul went, to the facility, and it was very painless. And
right. And we know that's not true in real life.
Right. Right. And they paint the picture of what it is not. And people
Yeah.
just believe that, and you can't trust them at all.
No,
Mhm.
and here's the thing too, that we as a country, like if I was God, I would smite America, right? Like we've killed
That's right.
we've done all these things, right? Thank
That's
goodness,
why I'm glad we're not God. Okay.
thank goodness he gives us
I'm with you, Gail. Yeah.
like I'd be smiting and asking questions.
Machine
Like,
gun, you know?
but that's me. That's me. That's why I'm not, I'm Gail, not God. We'll start with a G though. No, but you in America, in particularly, and probably other places in the world too,
Mhm.
we have forgotten the fact that it's not about the physical self. We are not a body that happens to have this little thing called a soul. We are a soul that happens to have a body, right? And so,
Earthly tense.
right, and so regardless of how we go out of this world, we want to go out the way God wants us. We want to be born when God decides we're going to be born, and die when God decides we're going to die, and live with whatever ailments God has decided. Sometimes it's not God. Like I can't blame God for some things. I just wrecked it myself, right? With my diet or whatever. But like you can't blame that stuff on God. That's your own fault.
Right.
But we have to remember that the soul, taking care of the soul at the end of life, is the most important thing, right? Because the devil wants that prize. It's a very valuable prize.
Oh,
So
yeah.
taking care of our loved one's soul and praying with them and being with them, that is the best way for them when they leave this world, is you there
Right.
praying with them, not some guy sticking a needle in their arm and hastening their death or taking away their last moments of
Dr. Kevorkian status.
Yeah. Right? Like,
yeah.
Well, in a lot of cases, they didn't ask for it. You know, if you're looking at medical aid and dying, they ask for it. And you look at abortion, the baby didn't ask for it. And in hospice, the person didn't ask for it.
And fight like hell if you're a Christian and you have a loved one. Just like I want to die. I just want to, I want to be put out because I'm in pain or whatever.
Yeah.
Spend that extra time. Like we're called to do that, praying with them and talking them out of it. And really, I would fight like hell with any of my family members that wanted any kind of medical assistance in dying, because I want them.
I don't want to fight like HE double hockey sticks. I want to fight like heaven.
Right.
Yeah.
Because that's the devil in their ear, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think anybody should be in pain. I've come across that way. I do not think anybody should be in pain, but I think you should minimize their pain and not just keep giving them stuff when they're in a coma, and you just keep giving them drugs and giving them drugs until they die.
Right.
I believe in minimizing pain. I don't think anybody should be in pain.
Right. I agree.
Absolutely not.
We have hospice nurses that come into our group, murdered by hospice, and we have 6,900 people now. And they say, we just, we're occult people and we just want people to be in excruciating pain. No, we don't. We just don't want them to be drugged into a coma and die from dehydration and starvation. But we are not for people being in pain, but you're supposed to minimize it. That's what hospice was created for in 67, minimize it.
Right. You can reduce pain, minimize the pain without hastening their death.
Right.
Because it doesn't matter if you steal a minute of life, 5 minutes of life, 50 years of life, all of their life. It's killing. It's a killing.
Yeah. It is murder.
And I think those are the ethical categories, Gail, of are you hastening death and are you intending death? Are those the two things? So in any treatment, are we trying to address the pain and, maybe this will suppress breathing? That's the big one with, have with the addressing the pain is what are we doing? What's the intent of this action? And are we trying to hasten death? And too many doctors, they see that hastening death as a good thing, right? As a benefit. And we really have to fight that, even though it may be legal, even to make that decision, that doesn't mean
Right.
that that's a decision we're making for our loved one.
So I see we got 20 minutes left. I kind of want to get your take on some things, John, about
We actually have 18 minutes.
18 minutes.
But he's counting.
I can't count, so I'm not an accountant. What do I know about numbers? To quote a famous judge. So what do you see for the what do you see the battleground, the sanctity of life battleground is in 2026? We have midterms coming up. We've got, all this stuff. It's an exciting time to be in politics. If you're not in politics, get involved in politics, because this is the Super Bowl of politics. So what do you see as the battleground and what we should be looking at in that space?
Yeah. I mean, one of the big focus, it depends on what state you're in. There's a lot of progress that needs to be made in a lot of states to stop abortion, to build a culture of life. And so looking at your state and some states, like my friends in Colorado, they're 20 years behind. They are 20 years behind what we did in Texas. So in Colorado, they're talking about parental consent, that a minor should not be subject to the abortion industry's marketing and decisions without her parents involved. We did that back, in the 90s, so I guess, more than 20 years ago. So it really depends on where your state is. And hey, that's a good step to have, right? Maybe your Democrat neighbors only get you that step, right? But having that conversation about protecting minors from the predatory abortion industry. In Texas, we're focusing on DC. We want DC to stop the abortion pills that are coming in to the state.
Yes, District of Criminals, please put a stop to that.
Yeah, we want DC to actually enforce something called the Comstock Act. That there's already a law that our Department of Justice could use tomorrow to stop the killer drugs, abortion pills. This is not birth control. This is abortion pills being mailed into Texas. Over 30,000 babies are dying from that. We need them to be courageous and to enforce that law. We also have a lot of changes here in Texas on medical ethics. With brain injured patients, we have exposed a lot of loopholes and a lot of problems. And I'm meeting with an elected official next week about how do we make sure patients have a right to a second opinion on brain injuries, that they have a right to deny certain tests. And then we're having a debate. It's a little crazy, Gail, but we're having a debate about just creating a complete opt-out of brain death. That if Texans don't agree with the concept of brain death, which is new, right? It's only been around since the late 60s, right. That they should be able to just say, hey, that doesn't go with my moral convictions. I had a patient advocacy case right now of an Orthodox Jewish family. And they said, hey, our faith doesn't acknowledge something called brain death. If the heart is still beating, we still think that that my mother is there. And they said we should not be subject to this brain death, legal kind of fiction. And I want to have that debate in Texas. We should be able to defend brain injured patients by just saying, hey, we are deciding not to buy into that philosophy of brain.
Right.
It's controversial, but that's something we want to have that debate.
I love it. I really love that. We're big believers in the board member. So the board members of Betrayal Project USA all have one thing in common, and that is that either they're a survivor of attempted hospital homicide or somebody was killed in a hospital during those years, 2021 in particular.
The dark winter.
The dark winter. And so we have this common thread. We have it's common amongst all the stories we hear, but a lot of times people will say, well, this isn't my issue, or the hospice thing isn't my issue, the babies aren't my issue, the brain death isn't it's all your issue. That's my, right. every tick, every deterioration of sanctity of life issues led to where we are now, right? When we didn't recognize babies in the womb as being real people, that led to us not valuing older people, and then disabled people, and then unvaccinated people, and then all of these different people. Like it's just this big snowball. So it all matters. It all matters. Life must be protected at all costs, from womb to tomb. And
I'm a big advocate. I'm a big advocate for that, because I was born the year that Roe v. Wade was put into play.
Right.
So,
and
my parents, well, my mom actually, she told the doctor to go and shove it. So basically, she's like, no, and so it's very important to be an advocate for anyone's life from the womb to the tomb. That's why I am so staunch on helping saving the lives of the babies. I'm staunch in help saving the lives of the people that are elderly and disabled. Heck yeah, I'm all over it.
And they normalized it right when they passed Roe v. Wade.
Yeah.
The first thing they did, like there was this show, a funny show called Maude. And the first episode after Roe v. Wade passed was called Maude's Dilemma. And you want to know how it gets normalized, where Maude turned up pregnant and her adult daughter was like, Ma, at least you have a choice now. And she was like, oh, I don't know. And she, of course, goes ahead and has the abortion, right? And there it was normalized right on in every living room in America that forever watched this funny show. And that's how they do it, right? They weave that stuff into your life so you accept it. And they've done that with hospice. They've done that with brain death. I mean, show after show after show after show, medical shows where they're reenacting the brain death, and look at the Terry Seago. Yeah, like that was all over the news, and half of America was like, the husband's doing what is right and the family's keeping him. And then the other half was like, no, you have to, like, these things play out in the living room. And so they're all connected. And even though your fight might be against, the death by protocols or the hospice or, shot deaths or the babies, it's all the same fight. It is a fight to respect life, to show true dignity in life, and make God in charge of life and death again, and not doctors who think MD stands for minor deity.
I love that, Gail, when you say that.
Heidi Klessig said it, and I'm like, man.
Yeah, I know. She said that. We're like, oh, yeah, we're going to keep that.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's why me and Marsha we joined forces, and and try to we on our website we take people's stories of all types of medical betrayal. We have the protocols and the shots, but we also take other. Yeah, we want to hear all of the stories because they all matter.
Right.
And people
matter.
Yeah. Right, exactly. And the more real life, real people examples, that moves the needle. Because people recognize it, and they're like, hey, that happened to me. I'm going to speak out. I get people who call me and they're just like, oh, I've never spoke out in public before. Well, neither did I. Like, I was just somebody's granny until they tried to kill me. Right. So Marsha, you were just minding your own business, and then they killed your mother. And it's like, John was just volunteering, and now he's
right. Now he's the president.
Right. So it's like, everybody needs to be in the battle.
I think you either what is that? There's like a meme on that. You're either sitting back and just watching what happened, or you're in the middle of it, you're involved. And I think people take sides. So you have the people that are pro-abortion, you have the people that are pro-life, and somehow there doesn't seem to be a middle section there. They're screaming. Usually they scream louder than we do. We're actually, more subtle and listening to them. But we just seem to have the two different sides of it. And you have people that, think everybody should be able to have the right to die with dignity. Well, there is no dignity in that to me. And then you have the people on the other side that are saying, no, let somebody live until they die. We just seem to be so polarized.
It's because
Democrat, Republican, we're polarized. And I don't remember that growing up.
Let me tell you,
we need to take back the language. The language killed us. Rush Limbaugh said, words mean things. Words mean things.
Absolutely.
And so we let them use the pro-choice words when really it was pro-abortion, right? When saying that you are pro-life is like a heinous thing to say in society, there's something wrong. Like,
So I'm pro-life. So if it's heinous, I'm going to continue saying it.
Right. Like I don't want babies to be killed. You monster. Like that how did we get there? We got there because we didn't take back the language when we needed to, and we're a little bit behind the curveball. And we need to do that with hospice and the protocols and all of that. We tell the truth bluntly, but with love.
One of my buddies.
Go ahead.
One of my good friends who's a pastor said this. He says, "Man, I went to sleep in 2024 on New Year's Eve, and I woke up in 1933 when 2025 hit."
Yeah.
Because the way that this stuff is carrying on, by the way they're murdering unborn babies, they're murdering elderly, they're murdering everybody, and it's like a lot of people are so silent on this issue. It's like when the people were being hauled off in the boxcars in Nazi Germany, and the church just kept singing louder so they didn't hear the people screaming that they were being hauled off.
Sing
this
a little
is
louder.
where we're at right now. It's like a repeat offender, like 10.0.
It is. And and this is why I said I like the focus on teaching people apologetics and how to answer certain questions, because when I hear people say to me, when I'm advocating for, not killing children, and they're like, well, what if the mother's poor? Well, are you saying poor people don't have value? Are you?
Margaret Sanger.
That's a terrible position to take if you think that poor people don't have value and that only wealthy people should live, because that's pretty elitist. Well, no, I'm not saying that, right? Like, I'm not saying that. They'll be like, I'm saying that, maybe the mom so should we help the mom, or the how many kids have you adopted? Right? Like, they'll be like, pro-choice, how many kids are you supporting? Well, there's the little thing about charity. Charity is you take out of your own pocket and you give. And trust me, guys, since abortion is hard in Texas, you need to be giving to the places that help these mothers, because even when they were making choices, they do need help. And so if you know somebody who's having a baby out of wedlock, help that person. But we live in a world where a lot of women have careers anyways. So it's like, but they'll say, how many people are you? Charity is you dig in your own pocket and you give out of, not even out of abundance, but, you help people. That's not taxing people and then helping them, right? And the money doesn't go to, if you give to a single mom or a house that helps moms or a clinic that helps moms, that's going to go to help the moms. If you give to the government, right, they're gonna take a dime. They're gonna give a dime to help the mom, and then 90 cents to facilitate abortion or whatever other things that they're doing. And so getting the taxpayer money out of this stuff is one thing, but we have to, we have to make it so that euthanasia and abortion and all of these things are unacceptable to society.
Mhm.
And the laws will
be.
Yep.
be
So
wanted
we
by
have 4 minutes, and I want to give John an opportunity to finish up and add anything else that you want to tell our audience.
Yep.
Anything?
Yeah, we covered a lot of ground. I'll just reiterate what we're talking about here with dignity. Dignity is the phrase that they've taken on the other side.
Mhm.
Humans, every human being has intrinsic dignity and worth that can't be affected, can't be taken away, no matter their economics, no matter if they're in a bed, no matter if they're in a wheelchair, or if they're not conscious. Unconscious human beings still have that dignity and worth and are worthy of our protection. And so that's what motivates us at Texas Right to Life. We're trying to take that principle that a lot of people apply to abortion and pregnant women. We're trying to apply that over there in medical ethics. And so we would love to partner with you if you're a doctor that's pro-life and want to help with these cases. If you're an attorney, we have a network of attorneys that help us in these cases. Sometimes these conflicts in hospitals, we need attorneys. And we have to get temporary restraining orders. And so we need, pro-life attorneys to help us. But ultimately, join us and partner with us at TexasRightToLife.com, where we want to stand up for all human beings. And we appreciate Marsha and Gail, y'all's work on highlighting, the attacks on life that not a lot of people are paying attention to right now.
Right.
That's true.
Well, we appreciate you coming on tonight, and you gave us a lot of information, and we really appreciate you coming on and sharing that with all of our listeners, because it's important and people have to stand up for what's right. And that's what our conversations tonight have been. Do what's right.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for the invitation, and thanks for hosting as Vin and Gail. We want to partner to stand up for life in all circumstances and all contexts, and consider us a partner in that mission.
Amen.
Awesome.
Amen. Amen. And please go to betrayalprojectusa.org and share your story. And if you do have a story, here's the rule. You have to go through betrayalprojectusa.org. My ally Gail will take care of business to make sure that you're vetted.
Yeah, and we want the more stories, the more stories that are out there, the more politicians pay attention, the more action you get. You're seeing action with things with regard to the shots. It's because all the Maha moms that were gaslit for years came forward. You see this stuff with the brain death victims. It took 100 of them standing up and some whistleblowers, and there's movement. It takes a lot of people to. The March for Life, perfect example. It didn't start off that way, guys. Through, and there's been so much. I never thought we would see a day when Roe v. Wade was overturned.
That was awesome.
That
Wow,
was
right?
big.
Yes.
That happened because of the efforts, and so stand up.
Mm-hmm.
And
stand up and be counted, because at the end of your life, you want to hear, "Well done, good and faithful servant."
What else are you going to do with your time? Watch some mindless shows or
watch mindless television.
Yeah, turn it off and jump in the fight.
Mm-hmm.
The battle
jump in the fight. And as my audience, you guys know, I always tell you, read your Bibles.
Yeah.
And that'll just give you everything you need right there, hand over fist. All right, guys, God bless you. We will see you on Monday with my guest, Pastor John Howler. It's going to be a good one, guys. God bless.
All right. Good night.
Vindog Radio.